New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Cosmic Prayer. It's so great to be back here this week, Monday, and it's 5 o'clock in the UK. And we are here on New Thought Media Network, this incredible broadcasting ministry that brings you so many programs, teachings, shows to illuminate your life and get you into using spirituality and spiritual practice for your everyday fulfillment and wonderful living. My name is Laura Tupper, and I'm just feeling so grateful to be here because every week I invite on a super guest, somebody that inspires me, somebody that I feel, oh, this would be great. Hello, Wayne. Hi from Calgary. Somebody that I feel would really be of benefit to inspire globally, and this week is that we have Reverend Dr. Michael McMorrow, who's here waiting to come on to the Cosmic Prayer. Reverend Dr. Michael is the senior minister from Center for Spiritual Living, Granada Hills in California, and I had the amazing opportunity to meet Reverend Michael when I was in California a couple of years ago, and I actually performed for his community there. And so I just feel so blessed that we've connected again, and I want to welcome Reverend Dr. Michael McMorrow onto the Cosmic Prayer. Hello, hi.
Hello there. Hello from California, and it's great to be here. And hello to Wayne out there. I see he jumped on with us, so we get to see him once in a while on our own stuff. So good to be with you today.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, it's so great that you're here. And, I know that we met we were saying it's 2018 when I was in the States. And I know that your community is so loving, so beautiful. And I just want a shout out to your whole community and those that I met when I was with you in your wonderful Center for Spiritual Living. Right. And welcome here onto the Cosmic Prayer. I know you're really busy as a minister and also an author. You've just released a book called Blue Collar Spirituality, which we'll talk about in a moment. I'd like to begin by asking you this question about prayer. And it is how you view prayer and what prayer means for you.
Well, in very basic ways, there's, I think the important thing for me is to remember that I'm not doing my life by myself. That there is an infinite power and presence, which is often confusing to me. That I'm not able to wrap my arms around it completely, that I have a sense of. And when I pray, it's a reminder that there's a powerful force and source that is backing my life. and that I can co-create my experience with it. And when I remember to do that, I have good days. And then the good days turn into good months, and months into years, and so forth. And that's been my experience with it. But I did have to find a way to be able to do it in an authentic way. And that took a while because I have a skeptical nature. And I would say that uh, I don't know that I struggle to find the perfect conception of what this notion of God is. And I still do today sometimes. And but that's not necessary, right? So in my finite mind as a human being, that stuff's almost unknowable. I'm only going to ever have a sense of it. Sometimes I will have cosmic moments where I'm immersed in it, uh, on the natch even, without enhancements, right? Yeah, and
Yeah.
so from that place, then um, it becomes a very powerful opportunity for conversation and
Yes.
reflection. Yeah.
And do you believe, because I love what you said, when you remember and then the days are good and then the weeks and the months are good. And that's natural. That is a natural thing, obviously, that we come out of that place of remembrance. I mean, that can go on for days and weeks, can't it? It can for me sometimes, where it's like, oh, and so that authenticity that you're talking about, is that when you not only remember, but also you feel that sense of your connection more deeply?
Yes, and that's, it's kind of like, well, it's a practice, right?
Yeah.
And just like anything that we practice, so I'm a frustrated living room musician, right? And in order for me to be able to play songs the way I'd like them to be heard, I have to practice, practice, practice. And
Yeah.
the same thing is true with prayer. So, particularly so I come from a tradition where we memorized prayers. And so the idea of speaking prayers spontaneously was a new concept. And so it took me a while to get the knack of that, uh, because I think mostly because I was judging it the whole time, to be honest with you, right? Oh, that doesn't sound very spiritual, right? But none of that matters, right? None of that matters. What matters is that we do it. And and I think also to experiment with it, right? So because there was a time, well, do you want me to go on?
Yeah, go on, please
Okay.
go on.
So I remember when I was in, I had this friend from high school. Her name was Carol, and we were at a party some years later, and we were talking about prayer somehow. Why'd you go to a party to talk about prayer? But there you go. And I said, "Oh yeah, I don't believe in that stuff. It doesn't work." And she said, "Oh gosh, I do. I absolutely do." So we went back and forth, and this was my agnostic stage. And I have to say that I really kind of felt like I was out to, in my early 20s, this would have been my early 20s, I really thought I was going to go out and conquer the world like many of us do. And I had consciously I was on some land that I had bought up in Washington State. And I was sitting, I did all this by myself, right? And so I had this moment of spiritual arrogance, I would say, and maybe even the naivete of a 20-year-old, not understanding that, uh, opportunity doesn't always knock in convenient ways. And so I just kind of stepped away from that whole thing and that whole practice.
Right.
Uh, and it really wasn't until years later, in my 40s, even though I had a lot of unity materials around because I was drawn to Emmett Fox, um, I the notion of praying scientifically, right, which is I think Wayne just posted something about the living intelligence, embracing that living intelligence. I just living spirit ever present with loving intelligence. Yes, that's not where I was at, right? Because I was still very much into a model of the divine as something that was damning and judgmental because there were 10 commandments, and frankly, I enjoyed breaking a lot of them. And so I thought I was irredeemable. And so I didn't feel worthy of prayer. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Wow, absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. And it's incredible, isn't it, how we're ingrained without even realizing how we're ingrained, and we carry those patterns until something happens, and then we have another opportunity to relook
right.
at how we can live our lives. And I'm sure that what it really makes sense to me what you're saying about how you weren't taught that prayer could ever be spontaneous. Of course, if you were taught to read it and that it had to be from a book, and that you couldn't absolutely live in this presence and be the expression of it through prayer as well, that would freak you out.
Right.
I was brought up as a in my family Jewish tradition. So for me, prayer was you go to synagogue, you go to the shul, the temple, and you hear it in another language, and that's it. So I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what the beep they're saying, and that really put me off of even wanting to investigate what prayer, but I had this feeling in my heart, like it doesn't even matter about the words, really. It was my feeling of knowing, and that's what led me into spirituality. So it is amazing how what we're taught
Yeah.
lingers.
Well, did you see Jenny's comment there that
No, I
just
didn't.
popped
What
up?
was Jenny's comment?
I feel like
Here
I
we
am
go.
worthy to pray, but I don't feel worthy of an answer. Now, there's an interesting angle, right?
Oh, Jenny. Wow. And yet we're always being answered, aren't we? It's whether we're ready to accept or to listen or to know that we are that prayer. We're the living
Right.
prayer.
Yes. And but it
Yeah.
takes, at least for a guy like me with a skeptical nature, it took me a while to get there. And you have to unpack a lot of stuff that maybe you haven't reasoned your way into.
Yeah.
And so and of course, my you were talking about, we get ourselves jammed up in a way that I suppose we've tried everything else, so we might as well try prayer.
Yeah. Like tick the
Instead of
last
it
thing on
being
the
the first
list.
tool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of the first tool we grab, right? But, everything's a hammer, so we go looking for a nail. But the so my thing was I was fond of drink, and so I had to go get straightened out in a 12-step program. One of the things that I really appealed to me about that, I mean, straight away, was this notion of a higher power.
Yeah.
Now, it took me 13 years of contemplating what that means and how to use that higher power to do other things before I stumbled into a New Thought church, in this case, religious science. So there, the whole proposition of prayer is kind of, it's not turned on its head, but it's just tweaked just enough to make it a, a proposition to be explored. Let's see. Yeah, when you're taught not to ask anything, but at the same
Same time,
breath taught to pray.
to
Yes,
pray.
yeah. And so
So
through religious,
just backtrack a little bit. When you
sure,
say there's a, that it's slightly tweaked, it's not turned on its head, but it's slightly tweaked. Explain that
yeah,
further to listeners in your way, so that we can get your understanding of that.
right. So the notion that, for instance, if our view of the divine is something that must be appeased, uh, then we're constantly locked in this, how do we turn the cosmic tumblers with our languaging to appeal to this divine entity who will somehow hear my plea over the other 7 billion pleas and then, and then bestow upon me the blessing. What the new thought perspective, and I'll speak mostly to what we call religious science, is that first exploring what the nature of God is, right? And that God is in, through, and as all of creation, throughout the cosmic universe, from the tiniest quark to human beings, and that it's all, as Wayne says, 100% divine. So that means it must be in me also. So now there's an attuning. It's an attuning that goes on as I connect with my understanding of that and stay with my commitment to know, even knowing that that is ever evolving, so I never arrive anywhere, and that I can speak my word with authority, knowing that there is a cosmic resonance going on, if you will, within this cosmic mind or living spirit or living intelligence or God or whatever. So now all of a sudden, languaging, you see, is the limiting factor to our understanding. So really, it's more of a, then it becomes more of a heart thing, which is kind of a, for a hard ass like me, that's not always the easiest place to access because it's not comfortable. And
Right.
yet, and so we connect with the spirit. We know that we're one with it. We speak our word with authority. We're grateful because we know that it's already in play, and then we release it to the divine unfoldment. So now I'm not so much looking for an answered prayer, but rather a demonstration that God is by means of the word that I've spoken into this field. Now, I don't know if that's all jargony or not, but it's it's just different. Now I come from a Christian background, a Catholic background, so for me that looks like Christ consciousness or Holy Spirit. Uh, because we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater with this thing, right? So
Yeah.
we resonate those childhood things where we had that sweet childlike connection to the spirit. We want to cultivate that and allow it to emerge. And at the same time, we don't want the adult brain to over intellectualize everything to where we are, stuck in our heads and no longer engaged with life.
So just to kind of highlight something here, because, and I think it ties back to Jeannie's, was it Jeannie, she put a memo in here about not being worthy, to actually ask for anything. And yet, here we go, I feel like I'm worthy to pray, but I don't feel worthy of an answer. And linking that in with what you're saying here, we're not praying to something outside of us. So this prayer, it's a shift in our own consciousness, isn't it? It's not an
Yes.
ask for, am I worthy to receive? Because it's a shift in our consciousness, that knowing that I am worthy to receive, that's a shift in itself. I
Yes.
see that as that as the prayer.
Yeah, so it's more of an attuning, right? It's more of an
Yeah,
attuning to the spirit, and then an allowing, right?
yeah,
Because in all of my prayers, I always include this or something better, this or
right.
something greater. Because what I know about that is that oftentimes my best thinking is what got me to where I am. so,
Yeah.
so I often need a new thought
That's quite
to work
scary
with.
when you put it like that. Not for you, for me, for me.
Yeah, no, I think it's the human condition, right? So even
Yeah.
thinking, the worthiness thing that Jeannie brought up, like so in my tradition that I grew up, here you are as a 7, 8-year-old kid making your first communion, right? Where you are actually receiving Jesus into your heart by means of the Eucharist, right? And the prayer that you say before you take the host is, "O Lord, I am not worthy to receive you, but only say the word and I shall be healed." So there's a lack of worthiness, but also an extreme statement of faith. Say the word and I shall be healed. So when we look back on the teachings of Jesus, we see that that's kind of a common theme. Say the word and you'll be healed, right? And that's where the authority part comes from. But we're not doing it with the egoic mind,
Yeah.
right? We're doing it by attuning, resonating ourselves to the divine spirit, the divine Om, if you will, to bring in a Indian notion. Uh, so for anyone who plays an instrument, if you pick, even if you don't, if you just pick up a guitar and you pluck the thickest one, the E string, and just feel the resonance in the instrument. And I that's how I see prayer today, is that there's a resonance um,
Yeah.
to this whole
And
thing.
taking the pressure off of it having to change anything because we want to add anything into our lives from a material perspective. The more
I
I
don't think.
use
Well, somebody was saying, we're taught not to pray for things, and I have heard that too. But we have to, we've chosen to incarnate in this particular expression, right? And there are things that are required to sustain us in life. Now, I don't know that praying for wealth's sake, I have my own judgments around that. Uh, I'm much more comfortable with knowing that I can do good work. I can be my most effective self, which in my case now is in ministry, but back in the day, it was I can be my most effective minister. I mean, be my most effective contractor by attuning myself with this infinite power and presence to know that I am intuitively guided to making right decisions, that I live, move, and have my being in the divine flow of life, right? So I'm using phrases like this that I um, brought into my languaging around prayer. And so for me, where I proved finally that prayer works, oddly, was in my construction business, right? And that's what that book, Blue
why'd you
Collar
say
Spirituality, is about.
why'd you say oddly? Why'd you say oddly?
Because I don't think we really think about our business pursuits as being spiritual. But once you understand that the whole world is an expression of the divine, then it all becomes a divine expression,
Yeah.
right? And so then it's up to us then to attune it in ethical ways, and uh, uh, to act ethically, to find ways of allowing loving kindness and compassion to express in your business and the way that you deal with your customers, your employees, that our customers are not pigeons to pluck, but rather, um, and they are not our source and supply either,
Yeah.
right? But rather that we are in a co-creative experience to create a win-win for all concerned. So the city gets their piece because they get a permit. They get permit fees, right? The homeowner gets their dream realized, and the contractor and the people who are involved in the enterprise uh, get a lift in their prosperity, and not just in the ways of money, right? Having the satisfaction of doing a good job, of having made a commitment and kept it, having made a contribution to the neighborhood because you have up leveled a home, if you will, or even some of the commercial jobs that I did, where we would take a blighted building and give it a nice facelift, and so now the neighborhood has been raised. So
Yeah.
right,
And the people that get employed in that process as well, to
exactly.
sustaining them and their families. It's all God, isn't it? It's all God
Yes.
expressing. So the prayer is like creates our foundation for. I love what you said for giving me let me attune to how to making good decisions, to directing my life to making good decisions, because ultimately that's what it is all about, isn't it? We are decision making machines. We have so much choice, and there's always 1,000 different choices we can make in each moment, and making that highest choice in every moment gives us this incredible way of living where we're actually living as God. Although we're always living as God, we're living in this highest light
Yes.
of God, of our lives, of the experience. I love that what you've said.
Yeah. And still, we
Yeah.
do live in the world of form, right?
Yeah,
So
of course. And we're
the
humans, so
more
we make
the only
decisions that are
yeah, but
yeah.
it all becomes grist for the mill, right? So uh, as people of faith who are committed to having an experience of the divine that is not where we don't arrive anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Where we're open to continually having a deepening uh, with that relationship, right? So the demonstrations then are not so much, the answered prayers are not so much to get stuff and things, but rather
Yeah.
to prove the power and presence of the divine at work. Now, that means we have to give the spirit a lot of latitude within our own thinking as to what that looks like. So there's an old Garth Brooks song, the country singer, and
Yeah, I love him.
right. So he has a song called "Thank God for Unanswered Prayers." So, sometimes it does work like that, right?
Yeah.
Or it seems to.
So is this the your inspiration for writing your book, which is called Blue Collar Spirituality? I love that title. It's an amazing. Well, obviously, it's not just a title. It's the content. It's what's in your
Yes.
heart. Because you were talking about reaching people who may not believe in God or may not believe in any form of religion and may believe that they do not need to have that kind of foundational spiritual foundation for their lives. So, what inspired you to this, to write
Well,
this
it
book?
it was kind of a nagging idea over several years that I had been kicking around. Uh, and I had 33 years in construction before becoming a minister. And and when I came to see things from a new thought perspective, the whole notion of creativity, of co-creating with the creator. I started to make these connections to my working life, and as a carpenter, I'd always had a sense of how creative it was. And I remember one day in particular when I was planing. I was just planing a piece of wood, but I had sharpened my plane iron, and adjusted it perfectly to where this perfect roll, you know how you get the plane shavings when you use a plane, and I just saw the perfection in it. I felt a sense of connection with the wood through the plane. It was a weird thing. And I wasn't high. It was just a natural thing that was going on. And so this notion started way back when, but I didn't really know how to connect all the dots. And in fact, I'd been in ministry for 10 years before the book finally got its start. And then, because this is the second try, and and then I became more aware of where I wanted to go with the idea. So it is written to the agnostic working person. So I have to tell you that most of the people who bought the book are wives. Yeah, Diego, a new meaning to the plane of existence. Really, I'll have to use that in a future
Plane of existence.
But
that is good.
Yeah. So the book is written to agnostic.
Yeah, I have this image of you, kind of. Sorry.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, I just have this image of you in the center, giving a talk with your plane of wood.
Well, and then picture my nail guns full of wood shavings. Yeah.
There we go. That's the actual book cover.
Yeah. So
sorry, I interrupted you.
That's quite all right. I'm glad you got tickled by that. But it's really meant, because I don't even talk about God really until the last. It's a very short book. It's only 5 chapters. I stripped out as much of the jargon as I could and still make myself clear. It's in I also tried to make it in very direct language so it would read fast, because I figured I'd only have a guy's attention for so long. And I don't use the word meditation in it, but I do talk about quiet time. I don't talk about treatment, although I give examples of treatments in the book. There's little questions to answer at the end of each chapter to encourage the man or woman. I mean, you can tell it's a male. It's been written by a male, right? The voice is definitely masculine. And writing to what I came to see after reading this thing about 5 or 6 times after it was published, I think in some ways it's a book written to my younger self. So for people out there who may think the way I once did, I think it'll resonate, and I know it does with both men and women who work for a living. And so in a way, It's also kind of a love letter to them, because I do feel that many of our working people are in occupations where they're not generally honored, and yet they are honorable things to do.
Yeah.
And now, out of the pandemic, we have a much greater awareness of that, right? So the people who delivered our food, for instance, when we were on lockdown, and continued to work in the hospitals and so forth.
Absolutely.
Or even the road crews that kept the roads in decent shape while we got around when we could.
Oh,
So
all of it, and the people collecting the rubbish in the streets. I mean, all of it.
All of it.
And what I really love about this idea of your book is that there is no jargon. It feels like, I mean, I haven't read the book, but from what you're saying, it sounds like it's just so easy for anybody to read and to catch the idea that there is something else going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then just hopefully to have kind of a guided discovery of what that means to the reader. So it's actually blue collar spirituality, and the subtitle is Finding a God That Works. And that's
Yeah.
what I attempt to do. And I try not to get too much in the way of that for the reader, but I'll have to let the readers decide that on their own. But I was starting to say that this is a great book to give to people who you've been trying, like if you're in New Thought and you're trying to explain to your friends what it is that you do in that hippie church on Sunday. This is kind of a great primer. And in fact, my beginning Science of Mind students have found this book helpful to alongside the textbook, because hopefully the book will then lead people to
Yes.
a unity or religious science center.
Yeah.
Because I just, there's a fellow out this way named Father Leo Booth. He's a unity minister, former Episcopal priest. And he used to say that religious science is the religion that everybody believes in but doesn't know about. Right? And I would extend
Yeah.
that to New Thought, to unity, to divine science, to all of these philosophies that encourage us to cultivate a relationship with the divine as we understand it, and then to utilize it in our daily lives.
Yes, and to practice it. So it's a waking,
Practice.
living, moving practice rather
Yes.
than this idea that we're sitting down for 20 hours a day, in this communion. We're practicing it in our daily lives. David Ramos, yes, it's as a retired carpenter, there was
That's
someone
awesome.
that was awesome, and I look around my living room, I see a few of those curls. There you are.
Fantastic, David. Thanks for checking in.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I love the simplicity of it, because it is in these simple things. When you think about that, that's an art to get that curl, and yet it's so simple, isn't it? And we look at a
Right.
wave, and a
And it's
wave, and
not a
then another
new
wave,
idea, is it? Yeah. I'm
but
sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
just how these things are happening in our experience. We only have to look to see them, and then there's God in that. There's God
Right.
in all of it. It's that's that moment of oneness, that connection, deeper
Yes.
connection. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So it took you years, and I love it that you obviously came in, or you were intrigued into religious science through the law rather than the love. If your heart was, questioning it all, and not really, and you feeling you needed to analyze and rationalize this this way of being, this philosophy, this other way of knowing God and knowing prayer. And now looking back at that, would you say, oh my gosh, I'm just, for you, that was such a blessing that you did that and you took that time to analyze?
Yeah, well, yeah, when I look back on the arc of my life, it does kind of trip me out, because, there's been, I had this construction business, and, you know, I've been audited a couple times. I've been married a couple times. So I've hit the fork in the road many times. And, I'm grateful that I never uh, discarded my faith.
Yeah.
And I realize today what a precious thing that is, that spark of faith that is instilled within us. that if we let our heart get too hard, John O'Donohue talks about in Anamkara, this thick layer of clay that we allow to accumulate around the heart.
Mm-hmm.
But that spark of the divine is still within there, that spark of faith. And it's such a precious thing because in years of 12 step, I see people that really struggle with the notion of a higher power. And and the misery around that. Now, some people make their peace with that and just say, well, I guess I'm just an atheist, and they figure stuff out. But for those of us who have this nagging notion that there's something greater than I am alone,
Mm-hmm.
and that this, then there's like this longing to belong, as Donahue talks about. Right? And so that
Yeah.
belonging sometimes is facilitated with a bottle, right?
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of ways in which we think we're going to connect with that until finally we just put all the stuff down, put the distractions down enough to where all that's left is our authentic self, right? And
Yeah.
then we have a much more meaningful connection, right? That allows us to be present with all kinds of people with whom we may not have mixed with before,
Right.
you know?
And that isn't always an easy journey, is it? Because putting the stuff down and looking within, looking at our own lives without those distractions can and often does bring up a lot of opportunity for healing.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's, and I'm not banging on drinking either. If I could, I would. But I'm a pig when I drink. So
You know your limitations, or you don't know your
yeah.
limitations.
But as someone who goes to events and stuff where people are drinking, having a glass of wine or two rather than 7 or 8, there is that conviviality that comes about. As in the 12-step program, Bill Wilson calls it the great social lubricant, and I think that's true. So I'm not saying that it's evil or bad or anything like that. I'm just saying for a personality of my type, you know, and I think it's still in there because all I have to do is watch the way I am around chocolate chip cookies, right? If I have
Right.
one, I gotta have a whole bag. So
And I think this
anyway,
is a really important conversation here on the Cosmic Prayer, because you're inviting people to know that that whatever's going on in their lives, there's no judgment on this.
right,
We all get to it in the way that we do, and for some it takes longer, for some it's shorter, for some it's more intense, for some it's sprinkled along the way, and we're dealing with our demons, whatever they are. We all have them.
right. Well, and
Yeah.
which is just the shadow side of our own psyche, really,
Yeah.
right? So that was the other thing that I really learned to release, was that there was this idea of some supernatural being that was trying to pull me off course all the time in the
Right.
way of a devil. And because as I started to come out of my fog and just looking at, I've always been an avid newspaper reader, right? That it's human beings doing nasty things to human beings,
Yeah.
right? And so what I've come to learn about that within myself now is that, I don't deny the shadow side is there, right? But I do work at bringing more light to the shadow. And as I do that, then I'm a more integrated person. And I would like to think that there's more light than dark. But, I, I still drop F bombs when I get, angry. And I try not to be too snarky with people, but I still am on occasion. And I have my little petty judgments of things, uh, where I would much rather prefer to maintain a sense of perspective on everything so that I can respond to life rather than react.
React to it, yeah. And that's what a deepened spiritual practice can allow for us to have to up level our awareness of how we are responding or reacting to things that happen in the moment. That's what I know when I've come off the track of prayer, meditation, quiet time, whatever you want to call it. I know I'm responding differently.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and just to know that, this spirituality thing is a loose garment. It's not a hair shirt, right?
Yes.
So you can be a cusser and still be spiritual. Right?
Because it's all spiritual.
Right? You just can't. What I think what we need to avoid is using our spirituality to rationalize things, to do a spiritual bypass around some of the real tragic things that can come,
Yeah.
that can transpire in life, and to not use our spirituality to play let's pretend, right?
Yeah.
But instead to use our spirituality just to have a deeper awareness, as Beckwith says, to be awake, alert, to be alert, awake, and alive to the living spirit as it pops up in all the various ways that it
Yes.
does, right? And it is all our awareness attuned to that which is already there,
Yes.
right? So,
Amazing.
and
Wow.
that's where prayer is really can be really helpful, right? It's just to really we're not asking God or even reminding God about anything. We're reminding ourselves that, yeah, Diego, that is spiritual
Spiritual
liberation.
liberation.
Yeah,
Absolutely, Diego.
which is a great book by Beckwith, by the way. So, yeah, I got to give Beckwith a shout out when we
Oh, my
can.
table's a bit wonky here.
Yeah.
So for those watching right now, and if you're watching on the catch up a bit later on, either on YouTube or Facebook or with the podcast, thank you, Diego. We are with our super guest, Reverend Dr. Michael McMorrow, who is the Senior Minister of CSL Granada Hills. There's the website. There we go, Shift and Lift. And I do receive your amazing emails. I'm on your mailing list. And you send out beautiful emails weekly to remind of what you're doing and the way that you're reaching globally. You're reaching people around the world from your centre, and it's the most amazing centre. If you live nearby, then go and visit and be a part of the community for a while on a Sunday or a Wednesday, because it really is a very welcoming, nurturing experience.
Thank you,
And
Laura.
I want to thank. Oh, it's beautiful, and I want to really thank you. If it was 3 weeks ago, I'd be calling you Reverend Michael McMorrow, and now I'm calling you Reverend Doctor. So I want to congratulate you on that, because
Well, thank you.
that's
How about that?
beautiful news and such a wonderful gift to know that you are a doctor, and that you are a doctor within our Centres for Spiritual Living community, and the work that you've done and you continue to do as a senior minister there at Granada Hills since 2009. So you're very devoted to your community. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It was totally unexpected when she made the announcement. I went, me? Like, what's wrong with you guys? But it's very thrilling and also humbling, and it's just and it's not a landing strip. It's a launching pad for whatever comes next. So, but thanks for the acknowledgement. I appreciate that.
It's amazing. Did you have a party?
Not yet.
You're in it now.
too bad
You're in the
my-
cosmic
my
prayer
mom-
party.
Yeah, exactly. We'll do something. We have I have two newly ordained ministers, and I have a newly installed staff minister in Nicole Robbins. I think you met Nicole through Agneta when you were here.
Yes, Agneta. Shout out to Agneta, my
Yes.
beautiful friend that I met
Yeah, well, that's
through
how we
you.
met,
Yeah,
was through Agneta Byland, who's now out in Arizona. They're
yeah.
building a house out in Flagstaff, I think. So
Oh, brilliant.
yeah, so thrilled for her. And anyway, it's
Amazing.
as my Irish grandmother would say, it's a fine life if you don't weaken.
That's true. Thank you, Irish Grandma.
Yeah.
Oh well, so let's complete here before we do a spiritual mind treatment, which I always invite guests to share a prayer at the end of the show here. Any words from you, Reverend Dr. Michael, for anyone that might be listening who is feeling that, oh my gosh, what's the point? What's the point of even praying? What's the point of getting into that quiet space? My life isn't working the way I really want it to do, and I'm not really even feeling inspired to stick with my spirituality. What would you say to that person right now?
I would just encourage them with all the love in my heart to just stay with it, to just stay with it, to think about the ways when of when you felt most connected. For me, that means being in nature. And so, if I need to go make a 5-hour drive to be in the Sierras, to be with big trees that I can hug, right? Right. Or if I just go
Yeah.
up to the hills, and just try to surround myself with life in a natural setting, and just to try to do a reset, right? And if
Yeah.
the tears come, let them come, right? However, we need to soften the heart, and just to know that Laura and I and Diego know, with you and for you, that there is this power and presence available to you always. And that we are knowing that as you stick with it, that your heart too will attune to that divine song within your own understanding, within your own disbelief, within your own struggle, that it's uniquely yours, that you matter, that you matter, and that one day at a time, you'll get to the other side of this thing, and you will be the better for it. And you'll go, whew, I'm glad I got through that bullshit, man. That was hard. And your heart will be full of joy, and then you'll move on to the next thing, whatever life has in store for you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you, Reverend Dr. Michael, for being here. Wayne is sharing as well. Yep, square up for prayers, definitely. Circle up for prayers.
And that's a carpentry term that I really
Oh, is
appreciate.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
Square up for prayers. I love it. That could be your next book.
Yeah, really. Thanks, Wayne. I'll lift that one.
So, would you like to join in here with a prayer, a spiritual mind treatment, and to knowing truth for whatever is in your heart right now, whatever you feel that this treatment could be for?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's
Yeah.
I'll just let her rip, and we'll see what comes out. So, what do you want? Like 2 minutes, something like that?
That would be amazing.
Okay. Because, I am a minister with a microphone. We could go on for...
Yeah, but we have Diego in backstage and he's got the timer on.
Okay. All right. So let's just take a deep breath and just breathe in that sense of joy in this moment, the sense of camaraderie and sharing and connection that we know that we live, move, and have our being in the cosmic internet of the divine, whose signal is never weak and that we are always attuned to through cosmic prayer. That we know and recognize that from whatever tradition we come from, there is but one power, one presence, one source, one life, one living intelligence, one infinite heart of the divine that is both impressing and expressing itself in, through, and as all of life, and in, through, and as my life now. And so, as we know that we always live in this eternal now, we recognize our connection with the divine right now, that we are one. And so, from this place of oneness, then, I now declare for anyone who is feeling a sense of loss, of disconnection, of wondering what the hell's going on in my life, that we are knowing for them that this, in this eternal now moment, that we are being cracked open by any seeming challenge in our life, that our heart is being cracked open, that we are allowing the thought forms of separation to simply dissolve from the nothingness from which they came, and we allow the heart to expand. We allow our mind to expand, that we understand and know that we are intuitively guided to ways of right thinking that attune us to the right decisions, to relationships that are uplifting and loving, that we are opening ourselves up to creativity itself, that we are bringing in the divine creative nature into any situation or circumstance that may be challenging us, that we are allowing this creative impulse of life to propel us forward into our next yet great to be. And so in this way, then, we just take another deep breath and feel a sense of gratitude in this knowing that we are setting a new paradigm for our life in this moment, and that we are now in that release. We are releasing this word, the cares, concerns, intentions of anyone listening or watching, that we're releasing it to it, that aspect of the divine mind itself, expressing as perfect love, unconditional love as the law of its own being, that aspect of the divine that knows only to say, yes, my beloved, yes, in you I am well pleased. So we now release it all to its divine unfoldment, knowing that it is done, knowing that it is so, and we know that we live wholly in the divine flow of chill, as Wayne threw in at the end there, that we just let it all go. And together we acknowledge this by saying, and so it is.
And so it is.
Amen.
And so it is. Oh, thank you. Thank you for being here and shining your light today.
Thank you.
On the Cosmic Prayer, really.
It was great to hang out with you.
Oh, it's brilliant. We've got to do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. And for anybody that's watching, if you're watching right now, wherever you are on this amazing planet, Reverend Dr. Michael McMorrow is the Senior Minister for CSL Granada Hills. They have an amazing online community and a physical community that you can go and check out if you live in California and feel like being with, definitely with like-minded, amazing people. Then check them out. And Diego, thank you. You put up the website. It's a great website as well. And of course, Reverend Dr. Michael's book, Blue Collar Spirituality. You can find that on Amazon. There we go. Drilling away. And thank you for being here, and thank you for watching and listening and tuning in. This is New Thought Media Network, an incredible focus ministry that is devoted to bringing broadcasts like this to you, right where you are, wherever you are, so that you can open up your heart to the power of yourself as this spiritual being here on planet Earth. So
thank you for listening to Cosmic Prayer. Your Weekly Shift with Laura Topper on the New Thought Media Network. If you've enjoyed this programming, please tell a friend and join us again next week for Cosmic Prayer, Your Weekly Shift with Laura Topper.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact us at info@ntmedia.org.